This is my last part to the biography, and it's my presentation on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I'll give you a couple demonstrations of how he played a huge impact in my role, in my life, and as well as I will show you a little bit of his speech. I Have a Dream speech, which is a pretty long speech, but I'm not going to take you through the whole thing. I'll just show you bits of it. First, let me start the PowerPoint. So this is, as you can see, this is Martin Luther King. And about Martin Luther King, he was born an American clergyman, activist, and a leader in the African American civil rights movement, which was around the 40s and 60s up to about the 70s was when he played a huge part. His biggest goal was to secure progress on civil rights movements in the United States, which I believe he did a very good job of that. He led the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. The bus boycott was a protest campaign intended to rise against the city's policy of racial segregations. Whites were intended to take the front rows on the bus, while blacks were forced to take towards the back rows of the bus. As you guys might know, there was a story about Rosa Parks who had went to jail because she didn't give up her seat, so that had something to do with the Montgomery bus boycott that happened in 1955. And at the age of 35, Martin Luther King Jr. was the youngest man to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. After he was notified that he had been selected, he announced that he would turn over the prize for the money, which was $54,123, to further the civil rights movement, which is, a very good deed for somebody to do. A lot of people would have kept that money. And throughout his life, Martin Luther King had been arrested about 20 times over stuff that. The great thing is he didn't commit no violence. All the times he was arrested was because he wasn't doing what other people wanted him to do. He was doing what it was best for African Americans in this country. He had been awarded with 5 honorary degrees, which is in the sense of school, and in 1963 he was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year. A little bit about his early life. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia on January 15, 1929. He was the son of Michael King. His father was originally named Michael King until they traveled to Germany, where the father changed both their names to Martin Luther after the German Protestant leader Martin Luther, which is kind of ironic because I'm writing a paper about Martin Luther in my other class. Martin Luther King Jr. attended Booker T. Washington High School. He attended the 10th, 11th, and skipped 9th and 12th, entering which he entered, as I told you in my paper, he entered Morehouse College at the age of 15 without graduating high school. But he graduated from Morehouse with a degree in sociology, which is pretty incredible. So that would mean he probably graduated roughly around the age of 19. After Morehouse, King began his doctoral studies at Boston University, and he received his Doctor of Philosophy. He got married to a lovely woman, which I'm sure everyone's heard about. She passed away about 6 or 7 years ago, named Coretta Scott. They got married in 1953. He became the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. One of the biggest things we probably know Martin Luther King Jr. about is the March on Washington. And let me give you a brief summary about the March on Washington. On August 28, 1963, over 250,000 people gathered up at Washington Monument to march the Lincoln Memorial as a nonviolent protest. Before the march began, police gathered up thousands of men to look over the march, expecting the protest to be violent and harmful, but it turned out that it was peaceful. No police officers were ever needed, which is pretty incredible, because that march, the police, I thought there was going to be a lot of violence for reasons, because it was around the time when African Americans weren't treated the same as weren't treated and didn't have the same privileges as the whites in America. So the police thought it was going to be a violent march in order for them to get their rights. But with Dr. King involved in it, it was non-violent. But let me keep going. The entire protest was covered on CBS live on television, so everyone was watching this. After the Lincoln Memorial, many speakers spoke, including the Big Six. The Big Six consisted of civil rights leaders James Farmer, John Lewis, A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins, Whitney Young, and the famous Martin Luther King. This is where he made his "I Have a Dream" speech. When King stepped up at CBS, immediately cut off the normal broadcasting on the television to replace it for his speech. So everyone was able to read, everyone was able to hear, everyone that was watching the march was able to hear and see the "I Have a Dream" speech. And "I Have a Dream" speech is basically Martin Luther King talks about his dream for the country and for those who don't have as many privileges to get the same privileges in the future, which I can definitely say has helped a lot now. But I'm not even going to talk about the speech. I'm going to let you listen to that later on my presentation. And a couple problems he faced. He faced problems during the civil rights movement. He was assaulted several times by people on the street. He had received hundreds of phone calls and letters threatening to kill him, including his family. So his family was at risk too, not just him. He had been arrested over 20 times, like I said earlier. One of the most famous threats made to Martin Luther King was on January 30th, 1956. A bomb was thrown into King's house. Nobody was seriously injured. Like I said, his family was also involved in it, which is once you're playing with a man's family, that's playing with a lot. But he was able to overcome all that. He was virtually harassed on a daily basis, basically. And on 1964, King was harassed by a group of black Muslims. They threw stones at him in the streets. Through all this, Martin Luther King was still a very strong man and proceeded to get civil rights for African Americans in this country. Not just African Americans, those that didn't have the same privileges. He wanted everybody to have the same privileges. And through all this, he was still able to overcome all that. And he was very sadly, he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968 at 6:01 p.m. He was standing outside the balcony of his hotel room, the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. As he was standing there, a shot rang, striking King directly in the jaw and his neck, killing him almost instantly. After the assassination, as you expect, blacks around the nation took streets and there were massive riots. The FBI investigated the crime. They arrested one man, but many people, including King's family, believed that the man they arrested was innocent. So the FBI did get somebody, but like they said, King's family believed it wasn't the right man. And I told you, this is a picture of Martin Luther King holding his Nobel Peace Prize that he was awarded. And this is a picture of him giving his "I Have a Dream" speech. And these are my references. Let me take you to a YouTube video where you can hear and see the "I Have a Dream" speech. Let me see. All right. Here it goes.